Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this planning subcommittee. My name is Barbara Blake. I'm the chair of this committee, and I'm a Seven Sisters ward councillor. So if the committee could introduce themselves, please, starting with Councillor Rice.
Rachel Rice, Councillor Tottenham Hale and Vice Chair.
Nicola Bartlett, Councillor for West Green.
John Bevan, Councillor, Northumberland Park.
George Dunstall, Councillor for Stroud Green.
Scott Emery, Councillor for Highgate.
Sean O'Donovan, Councillor for Tottenham Hale.
Cathy Brennan, Councillor for Muswell Hill.
Mina Ibrahim, Councillor for Knoll Park.
Sue Jameson, Councillor for Bruce Castle.
Thank you. And if the officers present can introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Felicity Foley, I'm the committee's manager.
Justin Farley, Legal Officer.
Rob Szosowski, Assistant Director for Planning, Building Standards and Sustainability.
Bobby McNocker, Head of Development Management and Planning Enforcement.
Valerie O'Key, Planning Officer.
John McRory, Major Applications Team Leader.
Richard Truscott, Design Officer.
And Suzanne Kimman, Climate Change Manager.
Thank you. And we have other officers who are in attendance virtually, and they will introduce themselves when relevant. So we're now on to item 1, which is filming at meetings. This item is being recorded. All registered speakers should be aware that they will be recorded for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting. And so if you can just note that paragraph on the agenda. Item 2, which is the planning protocol. Members and speakers are requested to note the information set out at item 2 on the agenda. We have apologies. So we have apologies received from Councillor Alex Worrell, and no other apologies. Item 4, there are no items of urgent business, and we're on to now item 5, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest? Councillor Ibrahim.
Thank you, Chair. So for item number 8, I'm not going to participate because I'm a ward councillor. And for item number 10, just as usual, I'd like to declare that I hold a Arsenal Football Club membership, and I'm also a member of Arsenal Independent Supporters Association, but we'll be viewing it with an open mind.
Okay, thank you. So for item 8, you will go and sit out.
I wanted to clarify on that. I'm only not participating because I'm a ward councillor. I mean, if I can leave the room, or as a ward councillor, I might want to hear any of the questions asked, because it's a, I mean, just want to double check and clarify what the position is on that.
Councillor, can I just check, when you say that as a ward councillor, you might want to ask questions, I didn't get the impression that you're representing anybody as ward councillor this evening.
I'm not representing
anybody. So you're
anybody.
not proposing to ask?
No, I'm not.
So you're not proposing to participate?
No, I'm not going to participate in the vote or the decision, simply as a ward councillor. I just think.
So the usual practice is that you do actually leave the room?
Fine. That's perfect.
Okay, thank you for that. So we're on to item 6, which is the minutes of, and that's sorry, let me just get my, so that's the minutes held on the 6th of March 2023 and 24th of April 2023. So does the committee approve those sets of minutes, please? Yep. Okay, thank you, they're approved. Right, so we will now consider the planning applications. And the first one is 30 to 36 Clarendon Road, off Hornsey Park Road. That's pages 37 to 248 in the pack. The proposal is set out in the pack, and I will hand over to Philip Elliott. Is that right? No. Valerie, sorry, I don't. Sorry about that, Valerie. We will hand over to the recommendation is to grant. So I will hand over to Valerie, okay, who will introduce this application. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is for the demolition of the existing buildings and construction of a Part 2, 6, 8 and 11-storey building plus basement mixed-use development comprising 51 residential units and 560 square metres of commercial floor space with access parking and landscaping. This slide shows an aerial view of the site highlighted in red from the south and north. The site is situated on land bounded by Clarendon Road to the north, northeast and west, Hornsey Park Road to the east and Turnpike Lane to the south. Immediately southeast of the site is the African Caribbean Cultural Centre, which was previously known as the West Indian Cultural Centre, and the Council's Day Centre, which is the Clarendon Recovery College, which is to the southwest. And to the southwest of the site is a residential block known as West Point apartments, ranging from 6 to 7 stories in height, and 2 to 3 stories light industrial buildings to the north and west of the site. The site is currently occupied by a 2-storey 1970s brick building known as the Jessica Buttons Factory. The ground floor is currently in use as a temporary nursery and church, whilst the upper floor is in use for office and storage for the Jessica Button Factory, and there is hard standing to the west for vehicle parking. The site forms part of Site Allocation 23, which is known as Clarendon Road South, which seeks to realign Clarendon Road and create employment-led mixed-use development to complement the Clarendon Square development site to the north. And the site allocation covers 27 to 33 and 9 to 70 Clarendon Road, which includes the African Caribbean Cultural Centre, the Council's Day Centre, and London Levy Cultural Centre, Civica Election Service, Hertie Limited, Virgin Media, and Katarina House. This slide shows the emerging context with the site shown in yellow, located within Site Allocation 23, which is highlighted in red. To the north is the Clarendon Square development, highlighted in blue, which received hybrid planning consent in 2018, with phase 1 and 2 completed and occupied, and phase 3 of this site currently under construction. To the west, on the other side of the railway, is the New River development, highlighted in pink, and further west is the former Hornsey Depot development, highlighted in yellow. The site was previously proposed to be part of a wider comprehensive development proposal within the site allocation for a scheme which incorporated the Clarendon Recovery College, highlighted in pink, and the African Caribbean Cultural Centre, highlighted in yellow. However, due to land ownership issues, it has not been possible to bring forward the wider site for development. And the intention now is to develop the 3 development parcels of land independently of each other. And the Jessica Button site, highlighted in blue, forms the first phase of this wider comprehensive site to come forward for development. This slide shows 2 master plan options, option A and B, with an indicative ground and first floor plan, both of which ensures that the African Caribbean Cultural Centre, which is highlighted in orange, and the site allocation requirements for employment floor space can be re-provided in the future. The master plan allows for a deliverable phased approach and would include new public realm and open space, the provision of marker buildings and active frontages to Clarendon Road. This slide also demonstrates how this proposal is compatible with potential future developments at both the African Caribbean Cultural Centre and Clarendon Road Recovery College. The proposal is for a 2 to 11-storey building, including basement level, 51 residential flats, which is 3 studios, 19 1-beds, 25 2-beds, and 4 3-beds. Affordable housing, which is 9 affordable rent and 7 intermediate rent units, which is 35.61% by habitable rooms, 560 square metres of employment floor space, communal amenity space, child play space, private amenity space, landscaping, 2 blue badge spaces, commercial and residential cycle parking. The considerations include the principle of the development, affordable housing, tall buildings, quality of accommodation, quality design, landscaping, impact on amenity, transport and sustainability. This is the proposed basement plan, which comprises of the commercial basement areas, which include light wells, which is highlighted in blue, and it forms part of the 3 duplex commercial units on ground floor. And the basement level also includes 2 cycle stores and a plant room for the commercial units. This slide shows the proposed ground floor plan, and the 3 duplex commercial units are highlighted in blue, with entrances on the north and eastern side of Clarendon Road. And the shared entrance to the flat above is highlighted in pink. All tenures on all floors would have access to both staircalls and lifts. The refuse store located at ground floor level is highlighted in grey. The short stay cycling parking spaces highlighted in grey is located at ground level. And the 2 blue badge spaces are proposed at ground floor level. I will now focus on one of the key issues. In terms of employment for the scheme, 560 square metres of commercial floor space over basement and ground floor, that's flexible use class, e.g. light industrial office, is proposed. The employment floor space almost replaces the existing amount of employment floor space in its entirety. The commercial units will be individual duplex units. The commercial space has been designed as small commercial units to attract small local businesses. Marketing evidence demonstrates that there is a high demand for flexible commercial spaces to be used as offices, studios, and light industrial purposes in the area. The employment floor space is designed as individual duplex commercial units with a basement level used as ancillary space, meeting rooms, WCs, kitchenettes, storage to attract a high level of interest from potential occupiers. The proposal would provide a denser job to floor space ratio and would therefore increase the potential number of jobs to 40, depending on the end users. The replacement floor space will provide a valuable contribution to the employment floor space stock in the borough, and the scheme would result in local labour training initiatives. This is a typical layout of the residential units. The residential units will be provided on the upper floors, and each flat has private amenity space in the form of a balcony. 3 of the flats at first floor level facing the Clarendon Road entrance approach would have winter gardens that would have to sit within the external envelope of the building. And a large majority of the dwellings are dual aspect, with the remaining single aspect dwellings either east or west facing, and there are no single aspect north facing flats. In terms of affordable housing, the proposal offers 35.6%, therefore no financial viability assessment is required due to local London Plan Policy Fast Track consideration. The scheme would provide 16 affordable units, which comprise of 9 flats for affordable rent, 7 flats for intermediate, made up of 3 London living rent alongside 4 shared ownership units. And this slide shows the affordable rent, London living rent and shared ownership housing mix. And an early stage review mechanism will be secured by a legal agreement. This slide shows the 10-year plan with the affordable rent units highlighted in purple on first and second floor. The London living rent units highlighted in a lighter shade of purple located on the second floor. The shared ownerships units are highlighted in green and located on the third floor, and the remaining units, which are private, are highlighted in yellow. This slide shows a communal amenity space at 6th floor level and doorstep child play space for 0 to 4-year-olds. This slide shows a communal amenity space at 8th floor level and doorstep child play space for 5 to 11-year-olds. It is important to note that the play space will be accessible to all tenures. There is also potential for doorstep child play space to be proposed as part of the wider master plan proposals. For older children, the site is also well served by parks and open spaces, and the closest being Hornsey Park, which is in close proximity to the site forming part of the Clarendon Square development. This slide shows a communal roof space at the 11th floor. To the right is a close-up image of the roof terrace on the 11th floor, and the communal roof terrace on the 11th floor, including the doorstep child play space on the 6th and 8th floor level, will comply with relevant building regulations to mitigate risk from falling, with minimal heights with parapet being adhered to. This slide shows the landscaping master plan that would include permeable paving, rain gardens and street trees with tree pits at street level, and wildlife planting. Raised planters are also proposed at roof level, in addition to a biodiverse roof at roof level. A total of 5 trees have been identified for removal around the site. It is proposed that 7 new trees are provided at street and roof level, resulting in a net gain of 2 trees. This is the proposed roof plan, which shows the proposed 11-storey height at the west, stepping down to 2 stories to the east. This is the proposed north elevation. The new buildings will be predominantly faced in brick, with a darker grey brick for the ground and first floor base. The building will also feature decorative spandrel panels to the ground floor base and metalwork colour. You can see the communal roof terrace at 6th, 8th and 11th floor level. The scheme has been through pre-application discussions with officers and the quality review panel. This is the proposed east elevation. This is the proposed south elevation. This slide shows the design in context, and the proposal would result in overall improvements to the public realm, and the architectural form, composition and materials would be of high quality and appropriate to the location and context. The proposed development includes a Part 6 8 and 11-storey building, which steps down to 2 stories to the east. The location is considered suitable for a tall building. The proposed development is legible as a landmark. The urban design analysis and 3D model views of the proposal satisfactorily shows that the tower could be a successful and elegant landmark contributing to the planned cluster of tall buildings. The proposed development is of a striking and distinctive in design, and the building blends in well within the townscape, and it is acceptable in terms of impact on the local microclimate. In terms of impact on amenity, there would be no material impact on amenity of nearby residents in regards to loss of outlook or privacy, and no significant detrimental impact on the amenity of nearby residents in regards to daylight and sunlight. In terms of privacy, other neighbouring potential development sites are all separated from this site by at least a street width, with the closest separation distance 90 metres, which would ensure privacy is maintained, and notwithstanding that, there is less expectation of privacy to street-facing windows. In terms of transport and parking, the PTAL is 4 to 5, which is good to very good. The scheme is a car-free development. 2 blue badge spaces for the residential component is proposed. 93 cycle parking spaces are proposed overall, including 12 visitor cycle parking spaces. This is for the residential component. Delivery and servicing activity will take place from the adjacent curbside from the carriageway, and refuse and recycling for the commercial and residential units will take place from both sides of the development. This is the section 106 head of terms. Officers recommend the committee resolves to grant planning permission subject to conditions and planning obligations as set out in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. So does the committee have any questions, any clarification questions for Valerie, for the planning officer? Councillor Jameson.
So from what I read, reverbing, it said there was 10% of the dwellings had to be accessible, but there's only 2 blue badge parking spaces. But overall, like it said that things are easily made accessible, but there's still only 2 blue badge parking spaces. Is that not likely to cause a problem for someone?
Yeah, so that's correct. There's two blue badge spaces. However, if you look at the ground floor plan, which I'm showing on the slide, there is actually potential for further blue badge spaces if there is demand. So there's potential for 4 blue badge spaces in front, and you can see it on the plan.
Councillor Rice.
Can I just be made clear in relation to the African Caribbean Centre and this development? Is African Caribbean Centre play any part at all in this development?
No, so this development only deals with the northern part of that wider master plan. So if I go to the slides, the specific slides. Right, so this proposal focuses on the area which is shaded in blue. So this is like the first phase of this wider master plan. So the yellow is the African Caribbean Cultural Centre, which does not form part of this development. However, I did show a master plan, a wider master plan, which did include the African Caribbean Cultural Centre.
Is that still alive, this master plan of yours?
I think it was originally proposed by this applicant, but part of that site is in council ownership, so the proposal by this developer is no longer coming forward. And from what I understand, council are looking at their own plans at the moment.
Are you saying Africa Cabinet Centre is not owned by the council? Of course it is.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, the council as landowner for the Afro-Caribbean Culture Centre is looking at its own proposals to replace that and provide further development there.
A couple of more points. The brick you refer to, is it this dreadful red brick you tend to see everywhere now? The brick finished. No one knows? So I did say some time ago, the thing to do was to bring a model in. One could actually look at the finishing, but no one takes any blind notice of that.
Can we just clarify what colour the bricks are, Valerie, please?
Right, so it's a darker brick at ground and first floor level, and it's a lighter brick on the upper floors.
Well, that means nothing to me sitting here. I want to see the brick.
Well, perhaps the applicant team here, maybe they can talk in depth about the colour of the bricks. Councillor Brown?
I'm interested to know how, you know, you've got those lovely, the garden, the sort of landscape gardeny things on the levels. Who's maintaining them? How are they going to stay the way they're meant to be?
So yeah, so this will all be maintained as part of the management of the building. So occupiers would pay a service charge, which would cover the cost of that. Condition 5, which is on page 97 of your pack, is the landscaping condition. So that sets out the details that will be submitted to us. So they'll have to give us a more detailed plan of what's proposed. But point H of the list of things that they have to submit to us includes a long-term management program. So we will see details of that and review that and make sure that that's adequate to maintain that quality throughout the lifetime of the building.
This is also covered by the living roof condition.
Councillor O'Donovan?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your presentation. In the report, it mentions on page 94, I think, concerns were raised about the construction works in relation to the traffic and the dust. How will that be mitigated? When we visited the site, it is the roads into the site seem to be quite narrow, and from what we could see, very well used by different vehicles, number of large vehicles.
So, Councillor, probably best to look at page 100 of your pack, condition 13. So that's the construction management plan. So that has two parts. There's a demolition environmental management plan and a construction environmental management plan. So that sets out a number of measures that the applicant will have to consider and submit to us. So in there's an air quality management plan and a dust risk assessment and some other matters that will cover that impact. So we do look at that quite closely. There's also in the heads of terms an obligation that the applicant pay into a pool for a construction logistics coordinator who will work with all the developers in the area to ensure that there's some joined up thinking about the impact on traffic from construction to ensure that minimises the impact on local people.
Councillor Jameson?
Okay, so the design has gardens on various levels. What do they have to prevent falls?
I missed the last bit of your question, councillor. Can you just say again?
So, and the gardens are on different levels of the build. But what do they have to prevent falls?
Okay, so the roof terraces will have to comply with relevant building regulations, to mitigate risk from falling, with minimal heights for parapets being adhered to.
So what does that look like? Because lots of these yeah, so essentially what does that actually look like? You know, what are there to prevent? Like the design has got lots of family houses in. So there's going to be children using those spaces, and I mean, they're very malleable. They get over everything. So
at the detailed design stage,
well,
it will be looked into further.
So there will be more than
more details in terms of
prevent-
barriers to prevent people from falling and children.
Yeah. I think it's worth saying that the building regs is a 1.1 meter barrier, so that's the sort of ultimate protection is that every edge should have a 1.1 meter high barrier on it. I think in this case as well, the soft landscaping is designed to keep people back from the edges and things like that. So there's sort of you know, some absolute safety barriers and then some softer things that prevent and discourage people from going to the edges.
Okay, councillor Bevan.
Yeah, I am concerned about these two disabled places because we seem to be providing less and less. It used to be a standard of 1 in 10. So what is the procedure if a resident decides that an extra blue badge place is required? Because I can imagine the bureaucracy and the problematic of getting that sorted is really beyond any normal resident, to be quite honest. And also the 3 bedrooms, are these all kitchen diners or are some of these flats with separate kitchens? And then also, can we have some idea of the life cycle of this building? Because now we're supposed to be doing buildings that last 100 years rather than being knocked down in 50 years. And also, can you bring up the big picture of the design in context? Because to be quite honest, when I saw that picture, I think when this is built, some people will be saying, how did we ever allow something like that to be put up? It looks a complete, what shall I say? Well, I'm going to use the word, looks a complete mess.
So with regard to the additional wheelchair parking, accessible parking, the applicant suggested the conversion of existing on-street bays to provide the additional blue badge parking space. It says if there is a demand for it on site, and they would need to provide a plan for future demands, and this can be secured by a parking management plan, which will be secured by a Section 106 agreement.
So how would a resident who, say there's 2 people using the 2 bays and there's more residents that need a disabled parking bay, how would they be aware that that facility to apply to have some extra bays put in it is available?
I think that how it works in practice is that it's part of the management of the building. Maurice, did you just want to come in with some more detail on that?
The short chair, hopefully you can hear me. So it's a standard practice as part of the travel plan, would monitor it. And if there's a requirement for it, it will be built into the scheme. So when we design the Section 278 element of the scheme, we'll take that into consideration in terms of where we will put the additional disabled car parking bays, and the applicant will pay for that as part of the 278 design. And when the resident is ready for it, because now we do numbered car parking bays for disabled units, they're just put in an application for a numbered bay and we'll do that conversion for them.
Thank you, Maurice. So I think the other questions were about the bedrooms. Are they kitchen diners, or are some going to have separate kitchens, and the life cycle of this building?
I think that the answer is they're not kitchen diners. Just if you look at that plan on screen, the kitchens are sort of deeper into the buildings. You couldn't separate those off. So that I don't think there's any examples where that's possible. So that's still compliant with the London plan. It's not everyone's choice or preference, but it wouldn't be something that we could insist on through planning regulations. Richard, did you want to just come in on the design? And I think particularly that the sort of southern elevation or eastern elevation.
In terms of whether the building will look appropriate in its context.
Can you bring up that picture where it said design in context?
That one there, yeah. So obviously it's not, it's the first site in this area of Clarendon Road to come forward for development. Unless you count the 1990s building at the end of the street, which I don't think is a good example these days. I think this is a better form of development in terms of design than that. It'll have a brick that is broadly compatible with the wider surroundings, including the residential streets to the east, with similar brick tones. And it's a design of very similar design approach, this brick-based architecture with a series of stepped terraces. It's a very similar architectural approach to the Clarendon Square development, you know, the St William development, a short distance up the road. And we would love to see the architectural approach followed by the St William development carried on throughout the whole of this Clarendon Road South area. So I think that would create a consistency with Clarendon Square, and this would fit into that. So if the rest of the sites around it get redeveloped in accordance in the same form, to match Clarendon Square, this will fit into a greater context.
Okay, but just to clarify, this is the first building at that end of the road, isn't it? And
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the other sites, we are engaged in pre-app discussions on a couple of the neighbouring sites, so we are expecting them to come forward too, and we will encourage them to do a compatible design.
Also, sorry, just to reiterate, the scheme has been to the Quality Review Panel on 3 occasions. So 2 occasions as part of a wider master plan. A wider comprehensive development, and the last occasion as a separate independent development, and it's supported strongly by the Quality Review Panel.
And the life cycle?
How long's the building going to last for?
I'm trying to look for a bit more detail, but the circular economy statement assumes a 60-year building lifespan. But I think that further detail will be developed to understand whether it could go beyond that, and whether the individual elements, at what stages they might be replaced within that 60-year lifespan. But the applicant might want to speak a bit more in detail about whether that's correct or whether their building lifespan is longer.
Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 broad questions, so I might keep it to the sections to start off with. The first one's to do with transport. What is the actual design for the bike storage? Because I can see it's down for 93 spaces to be parked up. Obviously, we're trying to make sure that it's actually remains secure, and obviously residents end up using it. I'm just a bit worried that it might be 93 Sheffield stands just locked in no corner. And then relating onto that, Clarendon Road leads on to Mary Noyer Road, is it? Mary? Yeah. This road connects east and west cycling, the cycling bypass onto Alexandra bypass, and it goes through onto Hornsey as well. And obviously that connects it up to the east of the borough. Currently this road is beset by cars speeding up and down it. And I know that there was a speed bump installed on that road leading up to it, but it still remains quite unsafe for cyclists. And I was just wondering, in terms of this development and the coming developments, whether that would be something to be looked at in terms of connecting the east and the west cycle routes as well.
Sure, Chair.
Yeah, we'll bring Maurice in on that. Thanks.
Yeah, sure, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me. Yep. So two elements there. So in terms of the cycle parking will be a mixture of Sheffield and double stackers. And there is a condition actually required in terms of the design and the layout to make sure it complies with the London Cycle Design Standard, which is the absolute minimum we require in terms of the design of the cycle parking. In terms of east-west cycle route, we are actually at the minute looking at east-west cycle route in terms of a connection between the borough boundary with Hackney all the way down to the borough boundary with Enfield. And part of that study will look at the connection along this area, and that study is actually being commissioned, and we're going ahead this year. We're looking at implementation later this year into next year.
Maurice, can I just check something on the cycle storage? Is that going to be an actually contained unit, like a locked unit, or is that just going to be Sheffield stands out in the open downstairs?
No, it's not in the open. It's in the basement. So on the ground floor, we've got 2 short stay, and in the basement we have 2 cycles storage facility, and this combination of double stackers.
Sorry, is it behind a lock gate? Is there a lock on the system?
It will be a lock gate, so you'll need to go into the lift and down into the basement, and it will be secure. It'll be secure shelter.
Okay, go on. So, no, just go on, Councillor.
Sorry, apologies. I thought the question might link. Can I get a bit more information on the homes that lose a large amount of daylight? I think that's on page. See if I've got it. Yeah, sorry. The 1 page number I didn't write down. 131. So it says there that there's 13 that will be marginally affected and the 3 remaining. Can I have a bit more information on the extent of which they lose their daylight?
Just while we bring up the detail on that, it's probably worth mentioning as well that there's conditions that this development complies with secure by design, which is the Met Police's standard for security. So every door and lock and everything will have to comply with that, and they will look at the security of the bike stores through that. So that's a consideration we'll also have to take into account.
So on the daylight, the applicant's study has found that there'll be 16 north-facing windows in West Point Apartments. 13 are marginally affected, and 3 are beneath overhanging balconies. Those 3 would be more affected, but they're sort of windows that are already getting rather poor daylight because they're beneath overhanging balconies, and the fact that they're north-facing means that they've not got particularly good daylight already. There are 5 windows in Katerina House, that's number 50 Clarendon Road, which is a property that's been converted from employment use to residential without planning permission. They would lose noticeable amounts of daylight, but they're also all beneath overhanging balconies. So they also the daylight level. And the 4 small windows in the rear of 23 to 29 Hornet Park Road, basically really tucked into the corner of their projecting rear projections. They're also windows that start with relatively poor daylight. So the nearby windows that would be affected are windows that start with poor daylight levels and are in almost impossible positions to avoid losing daylight from development. And the other thing I think it's worth pointing out is that this site has only got a small 2-storey building on at present, whereas we're expecting considerably larger development in this area. So effectively, they've been getting unusually good levels of daylight up until now, and they'll be going back down to more expectable levels of daylight rather than poor levels. I don't think any of these flats would get poor levels of daylight.
Okay, Councillor Jameson.
So going back to the cycling thing, are the racks big enough to accommodate cargo bikes, and the lifts big enough to accommodate cargo bikes? Because if you're going to have families living there and it's a car-free zone, people are going to have cargo bikes.
So, Councillor, on the ground floor, we have some spaces to accommodate cargo bikes, which essentially doesn't need to go into the lifts. I think from memory, the lifts are 1.2 times 3 meters, I believe. You should be able to get a cargo bike in there, but we are providing for that on the ground floor.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I'll move on now to the
Sorry, Chair.
one then.
Sorry, there's one last question to do with the environmental situation. It's been suggested apparently that it's been discouraged to use mat-based green on the roof in terms of the planting structure. When it says discouraged, has the developer actually confirmed that it's not going to do it, or is it just being discouraged?
Sorry, I didn't
Would you like some
understand.
clarification?
Could you just repeat? Yeah, and could you just give the clarification? Sorry about that. So I got the matte-based green paint on the roof. Was that right? Oh, right.
Not paint, Chair, sorry. It's second. Oh, yeah. Page 156. The development is proposed living roofs in development. All landscaping proposals and living roofs should stimulate a variety of planting species. Mat-based sedum systems are discouraged. So this is to do with obviously like green roofs and stuff like that. I was just wondering whether the developer actually confirmed they were not going to be using these, or was it just being discouraged?
Does it not explain the reason? Because they retain less rainfall and deliver limited biodiversity. Is that okay? All right, we'll bring Suzanne in then. Okay.
You are right though, Chair. I did add a little bit of explanation, but I'm happy to elaborate on this. That paragraph is specific to extensive living roof types, which are typically less deep. In this instance, I don't believe there are actually any extensive living roofs, so this was quite generic wording that I included. These planting schedules will be much larger in terms of soil depth. And the reasoning behind that is, again, so that the plants can develop better, will retain more rainfall, etc. And just to answer your question more generally about mat-based sedum layers that we discourage, they tend to be shallower in depth, and we also encourage a mixture of plug plants and seeds. And when you have sedum mat-based systems, they're quite monoculture. So we'd like to see a variety of species being developed so that the roof has more chance of surviving. Thank you.
Just in terms of some of the detail of that, page 109, condition 34, part A, I think sets out the detail of what we'd be looking for in terms of the substrate and that aspect.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so can I ask the applicant team to come forward, please, and sit? So I think we have John Wollstonecroft. John? Francis Young and Louise William. Okay, thank you. So can you, first of all, can we talk about the colour of the bricks, please? And then I'd like you also to pick up on the prevention of falls and the safety aspects in the play areas, please. So if you can just address those first, and then I'll open it to the committee for any further questions.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. So I'm John Wollstonecroft, Stock Wollstonecroft Architects. Just with reference to bricks, the brick colours. Councillor Rice, I think it was, that raised this. So we've worked very hard with your team and your colleagues to look at the treatment of brickwork to the north of the site and the emerging, as Mr. Truscott's mentioned, the emerging pattern of brickwork in the Clarendon Road development. And we've got quite a rich variety of brick. As you can see from the image in front of you, we've got a darker brick on the base of the building, which emphasises, in effect, a two-storey base, more of a commercial scale base to the building, which encompasses the entrance to Haringey Heartlands from the south. And it gives that sort of high street feel to the entrance to the base of the building. And that's a darker brown coloured brick, grey brown. We haven't specified the bricks themselves because that will be conditioned in your any determination you may give this evening. And obviously we'll be working with you. Indeed, we may well be providing some brick panels on site to settle on the actual precise brick specification and colour of mortar. So we have a darker brick type to the base of the building, and then more of a cream soldier coarse brick further up the building. So it's a lighter brick which appeals to the longer viewing distance. So when you're seeing the building from the longer distance and approaching Haringey Heartlands, it's not as dark on the landscape, so it's more fitting on the skyline, more attractive. There's a great deal of detail in the brickwork, which we've been pulled over the coals by your team on. Lots of stretcher bonds and courses, which give a base, a middle and a top to the building in terms of the architectural design. So that's how we cover the brickwork. Is that satisfactory, Chair?
Yes, I mean, I assume in terms of the overall, as Richard has said, the overall design of the road, it's going to fit in with the rest of the buildings.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be bright pink.
Indeed, down to the actual detail of the patterning of brickwork. There's more detail at the base, because that's where you're appreciating it quite closely. You're seeing that detail, and we picked up on some of the patterning further into Clarendon Square in designing that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. And then the safety aspect, which Councillor Jameson raised.
Yes, thank you. So Councillor Jameson, certainly in terms of the top of the building, which is the main sort of communal area, we designed a crown to the top of the building, which is a full sort of story height. I mean, it's it's a 3 metre tall edge to the top of the building, which gives a natural feeling of enclosure to that communal play area, play space. It's not so much a play area up there as more of a sort of more of an amenity area for sitting out and enjoyment, because we've got specific play areas further down on the terraces for the younger children. But certainly at that top, which is the tallest part of the building, we've got this full crown, full height, so full story height edge around the building, and within those openings, if you like, which provide that crown, there's tall railings within that, which are, as Robbie Mortis said, that there'll be a building regulation height minimum of 1100, but also, as you can see from that image, there's soft landscaping which prevents and discourages people from getting close to. They can't get close to the edge in any event. So that's the way, it's sort of more subtle way of controlling how people use the space. And on the lower terraces, we've got the same approach in terms of the railings, the tall railings. They are vertical railings. You can't climb up them. They are, they're safe in terms of children's use, and they are closely guarded railings. And then there is landscaping, again, which provides a second barrier behind the railings. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so do we have, yes, we do, questions. So I've got Councillor Rice and Councillor Bevan.
I just want to repeat again my request that when we have matters such as this to come before the committee, that we have a model which one could clearly see. These pictures are right, but they don't present the subject as well as a model would present the subject, and have some of the bricks or various types of bricks that be used to the finish of the building.
Yeah, I'll note that, and yeah, happy to put that to the next applicant with a brick building. Thanks.
Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, I think the officer suggested some tweaking to enable separate kitchens to be provided, because I think some ethnic groups, especially for larger family units, that's a requirement. Would you be prepared to accept the officer's comments and suggestion with that? Also, the the housing, which housing association will be taking up these units and managing them? Because it's obviously better that the housing association that's got all the new build up the road takes them rather than someone who's out of the borough. And then it seems really short-sighted to be building a building that's only expected to last for 60 years. Can you comment on that?
Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bevan. So just on the, I'll deal with the last one first, if I may, in terms of the lifespan of the building. I mean, it's a solid reinforced concrete frame building with a brick exterior and a concrete block construction. So hopefully it will outlast all of us, plus some. I think 60 years is, in terms of some of the renewable aspects of the building that have been referred to earlier in terms of circular economy, obviously things will need to be done within the lifespan of the building. So you can imagine having to replace glazing items, roof finishes and so on after that period of time. But the building will be there for hundreds of years, I would hope. Certainly a lot longer than 60 years. Referring to separate kitchen diners on the larger family units, Councillor. Now there are 4 larger family units, 3-bed units, on the lower floors where the building plan is quite deep. I don't know if you could refer that plan, Valerie, if you would be so kind. The 3-bedroom units on the lower floor. They are quite deep units. We can certainly look at that, councillors. Of the 4, possibly 2 could have separate dining kitchen areas, but it is difficult on those 4 because they are deep units. So I can't guarantee that we can manage that, but we could certainly happy to work with the officers to consider that in a further evolution of the plans. Was there anything else covered?
Housing Association.
Housing Association, councillor. So our client, Paul Simon Magic Homes, they do a lot of property management and development within your borough, within North London, one of the largest landlords. They are very open-minded as to which housing association to work with. One has not been identified yet. There have been no discussions. And certainly we're happy to work with yourselves and your recommendations in terms of housing associations. And as you say, it would make sense to work with the same association as is operating in the Clarendon Road Square area. Yeah, but once we've got permission, hopefully with your permission, we can work that through.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, Chair. Not sure whether this is for the applicant or for officers. It was mentioned that specifically the roof terrace, but I imagine there'll be other aspects, will be covered by service charge payments. I'm wondering what guarantees do we have that service charge payments won't spiral beyond affordability levels for people in those properties? Yeah.
So service charges going up. Can someone, is that the applicant team?
I can have a go, councillor. I mean, certainly it's fair to say that there will have to be and our clients, Paul Simon Magic Homes, are well versed in managing properties throughout your borough, and certainly there has to be a management plan dealing with repairs and maintenance and management. The scheme has been designed so that all parts of the building including both staircases, because during the design development, we included a second staircase going all the way up the building. They are all accessible to all tenures, as are the lifts. So there'll need to be obviously a service plan and management plan and a structure for charges worked out in due course in that management plan that covers the whole building.
And just wondering, there's been a lot in the press over the last 12 months about these kind of issues of people moving into properties, shared ownership or affordable rent, and actually the service charges being what becomes a kind of crippling fee for people. I'm wondering from a council perspective what we are able to do or what we have done to kind of mitigate some of that.
Yes, some of the tenures of affordable housing cap that, and that also becomes an issue for the landlord that's going to take those on, so that they'll be asking those questions on behalf of their tenants, so that there's good protections for the affordable. It's more of an open market for the private, but I think you can take confidence that affordable tenants will be looked after by their landlord and protected from unreasonable increases.
And just to add to that, councillor, the general definition of affordable housing within the London Plan talks about housing costs being less than 40% of the net household income, and that's the sort of maximum. So to be considered within the definition, service charges are lumped in with all those annual housing costs. So they are considered. We can consider it to some degree in looking at the planning application, but as you know, service charges and leaseholds and things are under separate legislation as well. So we can't control absolutely everything in planning. But under the definition of affordable housing, there is that control to keep it within an affordable amount of living costs.
Councillor Brennan.
I was looking at the informatives and I might have missed something here, but I see the recommendation for sprinklers. Are you actually going to put sprinklers in?
Phone's still on. Okay.
Here we are. Yes, Councillor Brennan, that's really a requirement these days since pre-December and the GLA recommendations. So the whole building is sprinkled, and we're designed for sprinkler tanks in our basement plant areas. Okay.
And it has 2 staircases to the. Yes.
Certainly does, Councillor Chair. It goes all the way up the building, both staircases.
Okay. Right. Are there any other questions, please? No? Okay. All right. So we're now moved to the recommendation, and I'd like to ask Robbie McKnocker to confirm the recommendation with a summary of any changes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think on Councillor Bevan's suggestion, we could include an informative that the applicant be advised to explore opportunities to provide separate kitchens for the larger family units. So that will update the recommendation to include that. So recommendation is then to grant subject to conditions as set out in the report and the addendum, subject to that additional informative.
Did you have your hand up? No. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So we'll now move to the vote. So all those in favour, the recommendation is to grant. So all those in favour, please show. Okay. And that's unanimous. There's no abstentions and no one against. Okay, that's been granted. So thank you very much.
How do we guarantee that we get that level of affordable housing? This is a basic question, but I don't know.
So the legal agreement that forms part of the recommendation will secure that. So the applicant is signed up to a legally binding contract to secure that level of affordable housing. So and anything that changes that would need an amendment to their planning permission.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you to the committee. So So we just need councillor Ibrahim back in the room.
It's working now. We'll just get-
And there's a quick 2-minute break if anybody wants to come for break. Oh, 2 minutes. Okay, are we ready? Are we ready? Thank you. All right, so we're now on to the pre-application briefings. That's so we're on to item 10, and that's the Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, 748 High Road, and that's pages 249 to 280 in the agenda pack. And I will hand over to the planning officer, Samuel Uff, to take us through the proposal. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. So the site has permission for a hotel under the 2015 permission for the football stadium. The stadium permission was a hybrid permission, which was part outline and part full permission over 6 plots. The relevant part of the site relates to plot 3 only, which received full planning approval for the hotel. This was approved as 180 conventional hotel rooms and 49 service apartments. A subsequent 2017 permission removed the restriction on the service departments, allowing a more conventional residential use, albeit with shared cores and services. This pre-application presentation relates to minor material amendments to the hotel approved in the hybrid permission for the submission of a Section 73 application. The scope of consideration is detailed in the pre-app report, but it can be summarised that the revised proposal can be considered and assessed against current adopted planning policy, mindful of the fallback position established by the permission. The principle of developments and uses remain as approved. The proposed amendments include reconfiguration of massing with reduction in the lower massing and an increase in height. It's worth noting that the latest amended height that will be presented shortly has increased the maximum proposed height to approximately 21 metres rather than the 17 metres referenced in the pre-app report. The overall number of hotel rooms and residential flats will remain as approved, but these would be larger and with improved layout. The reconfiguration would allow additional stairwells in response to the emerging fire safety requirements. The scheme has been discussed as part of pre-application process and presented to the quality review panel. Overall scale and massing were well received, subject to improved detailed design. The notes for these meetings are set out in the pre-app report. As with the QRP comments, officers are generally supportive of the redistribution of massing and additional height, and further discussions are anticipated regarding the wider planning implications. Thank you.
You. So I'll now move on to the applicants to present the report. So I think it's Annabelle Fernandez and Sean Bashford.
Yes, that's right, madam. Yes.
Okay, so if you can present it.
Of course. So I'll just introduce this Annabelle Fernando Rubio, and I'm Sean Bashforth and Quad Planning Consultants. As Sam has explained, we are looking at the hotel to the south of the stadium. The actual concrete plinth for that building is already there, and we're following that. We don't want to start again, so we want to use that plinth rather than starting from scratch. As Sam says, we're looking at design, but the things that are driving that is we've been talking to hotel operators, and it's actually refining design for the requirements that they need. Fire safety requirements, so you'll see on the plans that are in the committee report, there are 2 stair cores in there, amongst other things. And also we've been taking into account the changing context. So High Road West, the planning permission for that's been granted, and the club's own proposals have obviously changed in terms of the goods yard and depot to the north as well. So there's a cluster of tall buildings here, and we've refined that, taking into account the changing context. We hope to submit the application later in summer. As you'll see, we've had constructive discussions with officers and the QRP, positive. We want to refine things. And critically, we're just at the start of actually looking at the more detailed analysis of daylight, sunlight, wind and everything else. We've done preliminary studies, but we need to refine those things as well, and also take into account the QRP's comments, particularly in terms of the public realm and the podium as well. How does that integrate with its surroundings? How does that get used by not just the residents here and all the people in that building, but also by the wider community as well? So we're looking at those things, and things like we've had just comments about how does cycle access work, where do you park your bike if you go into the hotel as well. So those things are all in progress. Finally, just 2 key points. From the original committee report, there was 185 jobs full-time equivalent in the hotel. So just that's what it was predicted. And again, we're just refining those figures now. and 53,000 visitors a year to the hotel is predicted as well. So very good economic and employment benefits of the proposals as well. So Annabelle's just going to go through the actual proposals, but we'll welcome your comments.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to do a bit of an introduction. You probably have seen some of these slides, but we're essentially on the southwest corner of the Northumberland Development Project that was granted planning consent in 2015. That's the site, and the site along the High Road in the intersection with Park Lane. The application was a hybrid application consisting of, in this instance, for the hotel, a detail application, and as consented, the overall southern development looked as per the image on the left, with 4 residential towers to the east, the Extreme Sports building just adjacent to the hotel, and the hotel itself, which is the purpose of this application on this southwest corner. That was consisting of 180 hotel rooms, 49 residential units, and overall 23 stories above ground level, with 80 car park spaces at basement level. What we're proposing is along the same lines, 180 hotel rooms, 49 residential units, and 29 stories above ground. So that's 6 additional units, 6 additional floors, apologies, to the consented scheme. We've looked at the scheme through various pre-application meetings with the officers present here and the quality review panel. And we have been incorporating the comments that have been conveyed to us with regards to height. Overall, the height has been agreed and comfortable in that it sits lower than the tallest residential tower in the southern development. There's a lower height of the building that's aligned with the height of the stadium, and that's been addressed as well. We've developed a concept of blades, which we'll take you through in a moment, and we're following that through detailed design. We're addressing massing comments that the officers have conveyed to us in relation to the top of the tower and how the building terminates. And through the materiality, we're just trying to convey the clarity of that design concept of these blades for the building to look smooth and very clean and light as per the original consent. The Extreme Sports building is going to continue to be a leisure building as approved, but we're looking at a revised illustrative scheme. However, for the purpose of taking this application forward, we're going to retain the existing massing as proposed, and we can take you through that in the massing model that we've brought with us. We can show you in a moment the kind of how the building relates to its surroundings. We've tested some views, and we're in the process of reviewing this with the design officer. And with the quality review panel, there have been comments again, generally good positive support with height and massing, even though we've proposed an increase in height. There has been the notion of it being a landmark, which was presented or which was approved in the original scheme, and we've taken that forward in our design, which we'll take you through in a moment. A landmark that needs to be rooted in this part of Tottenham, and we're going to show you how we're intending to do that. The distinctiveness of the design needs to be shown in the top part of the building as well as the base, and we'll go through that as well. And there have been comments about how the walls of the building at ground floor and podium level can be canvases for creativity, and we can use them to bring in some work from local artists, perhaps. So we're looking at that. With regards to the public realm, there's a landscape strategy that at the time when we presented to the QRP needed significant work, and we've worked on that and presented to the officers recently. So we're consequently taking these comments on board. The scheme negotiating changes of level between podium and ground floor, and how that needs to be addressed as well, as has been an important point that we've taken on board. Provision of greenery that should be increased, so we'll take you through what's our approach for that. Activation of the podium level has been quite an important change and departure from the existing consent, where we really try and open up and create a very direct active frontage onto the podium to ensure that that's a safe and public space. There's from a sustainability point of view, we're currently working in our energy strategy, and we're addressing all the sustainability policy that's currently in place. We're committed to work towards beyond 35% reduction against Part L with regards to facade and building envelope. Embodied carbon calculations are being undertaken at the moment, as well as daylight and overheating. There will be on-site renewable energy production, most likely as photovoltaic panels on the roof level. We are working towards achieving net zero carbon as a net zero carbon operation strategy. And that will mean the building can be turned into being fully kind of electrified and just work with electricity. And we are looking at carrying out energy analysis to look for opportunities for heat reuse, particularly regarding hot water. The architecture, again, comments that have been taken on board from the QRP are mainly based on softening the building, the envelope, the facade, the skin of the building as it goes to the top, and getting more textured and richer as it goes to the pedestrian levels, to the street levels. We have proposed anything from back insulated glass to powder coated metal, and we're looking at ways in which we can consolidate all these elements in the way we'll show you in a second. Again, materials being more tactile and approachable at ground floor and street level. We are working on a lighting strategy that will make sure that, again, this idea of this building being a landmark is being seen as such at nighttime as well as daytime. The original idea for the change in brief has to do with how the building how the area has changed. So the stadium, which is new since the existing consent, has brought in a lot of activity and a lot of demand for hotel space. There have been challenges with regards to reusing a lot of the existing structure that was put in place when the stadium was built. So we're working on a design that reutilizes a lot of that structure that is existing on site at the moment. You can see in this drawing that the building, the original consent was 60-meter long by 15-meter width as shown, and we've reduced that to 53 and 38 meters as the building goes up. What's making it?
Sorry, which drawing are you referring to?
Yeah, that one. Sorry, the central drawing where my cursor is at the moment. The building has gone from a side core to a central core arrangement to make it a lot more efficient. Besides that, there's with regards to fire safety, regulations have moved on since 2015. We are to allow for additional cores and lifts in the building, which essentially meant that the existing application was no longer viable. So we have 2 staircases per use. That is an overall number of 4 staircases at the lower levels. And we wanted to look at the articulation of the massing, particularly from the west, as that presented itself as almost like a square section, 60 by 60 meters. There was a view that we wanted to address besides the very important view from the south of the high road. The I think I'll just in the, just given the time we have, I'll go quite quickly through this. So we wanted to respond to the main topics being keeping the building really slender on the south view from the high road, whilst making it a landmark, reusing the existing structure from the existing scheme, the approved scheme, moving the amenity space that we had on the top of the building to the middle section of the building in order to make the floor plates more efficient and the building more efficient overall, so you don't have to bring all the lifts all the way up to the building. And we wanted to bring the residential to the top of the building for these to enjoy better views. As per the existing consent or the approved scheme, when put in context, particularly in the context of the recently approved High Road West scheme that appears in this diagram on the left, the building seemed to have lost its landmark character. So we thought it was appropriate to add more height to it for it to stand out as a landmark building. The concept of blades was developed as a way of bringing again a lot of the existing constraints from the site, but also the existing consent sort of concept of bringing framing views towards the stadium and dealing with different angles and geometries that we had to consolidate into this part of the site. So the building is formed by a tower and what we call a shoulder element that mediates between the scale of the taller buildings and the lower buildings as you approach the street, which allows for views out. In terms of composition from the high road, being in the conservation area, or adjacent to the conservation area of the high road, we wanted our building to mediate between the stadium and the rest of the city. We wanted our building to mediate between the high road and the rest of Park Lane by presenting or creating this articulation of volumes, where rather than being a monolithic element, it was a series of elements instead. And the shape of the top of the building allowed to kind of weave in this existing set of directions that are set up by the stadium as shown in the diagram, to again sort of weave in what the stadium is doing on the high road, as well as the Tottenham experience, which is this building sitting along the high road on the southwest part of the site. Some of the views of the scheme from the south of the high road on the left-hand side, from the west along Church Road in the middle, and from the north along Northumberland Park on the right-hand side. Overall height, taking into account the stepping or the sloping of the envelope of the building, ranging from 21 to 27 meters in relation to the approved scheme, still 5 meters lower than the consented residential tower. And how the building presents itself and will be read as part of the ground floor, we thought it was important in that it will signal a very important junction point between the east-west route that we're identifying as important for the local area, in that it will link to important natural areas and green areas such as Bruce Castle Park and the Lee Valley, and obviously the high road. So we think that it's important to make emphasis on that and look Park Lane as a whole. With regards to the landscape, we've set up a series of design principles that allow us to conceive a design that will work for the entirety of Park Lane, not just for the hotel site. And that's based on a set of linear tree planting. We'd like to encourage active travel by widening sidewalks and reducing carriageways, increase the space for pedestrians, greening the podium parapet, since we have that interface with the podium facing the stadium, provide certain rain gardens, podium growth and tree planting, so introducing more green at both levels, raised planters and integrating play space. So when we look at the podium level on the top right-hand side image, We have a set of trees that we can plant on that part of the site that will be sort of northwest facing, and that will be directly opening up to an area where we've got an F&B offer from the hotel, and along Park Lane we've got an idea of greening this corridor from High Road to Worcester Avenue and beyond, where for the hotel site in particular, we'll bring that line of trees along the side. The reason for that area to be mainly hard landscaped to do with, just like the original consent, having to bring on board a lot of the servicing that needs to happen on site at the moment, so at grade.
Annabelle, do you have much more to do?
I will be as fast as I can. I don't have let me just go through the ground floor plans.
Okay.
Typical floor plans, so ground floor entrance, podium level, typical hotel floor plan and residential floor plan. The idea of the facade being kind of different planes, blades, infills, and folding planes as we get to the lower element of the building. In terms of sustainability, again, a lot of the concepts that have been mentioned already, particularly bringing sort of double aspect units along the sites and working to meet 2021 regulations. And that's the view of the building from the southwest, approaching from the High Road. And from the north, as you approach from what's going to be a new view once the High Road West development happens. So as you approach the site from White Hart Lane. And that's the overall view that we saw at the beginning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So there was a lot of information. Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Ibrahim?
So just some clarification. So my understanding is that it's still 180 hotel rooms, but your serviced apartments are now going to be conventional apartments with a different access route. So, you know, they wouldn't be viewed in the same way because obviously serviced apartments, it's, you know, bit like a hotel, whereas conventional units. So when you talk about conventional units, would they just be units that you would be letting as any other conventional units in a normal development that doesn't have a hotel below it?
So just 2 points on that. One is that the current consent it was originally for 49 serviced apartments, but that was amended afterwards. So it's actually, we already have consent for those 3 residential units, not just serviced apartments. So that restriction on the things actually been removed. You're right, you can access them as normal residential apartments, but because the hotel's there, the offer will be there to actually allow residents to use that, almost have packages of you know, whether it's dining, whether it's laundry and anything else. So that's the kind of the idea really. It's, you sell a package, it's almost sort of here's an apartment and here's things you can have almost from a menu of things with it, if you like. So
okay, so the conversion to normal residential units, sorry, because I'm new back on the planning committee, so that's already been amended, because obviously with conventional apartments, then there is my question was going to be, then there should be a consideration for an affordability element of it, and that doesn't appear to be the case here. So my question would be, is this a kind of roundabout way of getting to a point where there is still no affordability, but they are now conventional apartments, even though, you know, I can understand within the context of the access being via the hotel, you wouldn't really expect or you know, it would be understandable to kind of put to one side that affordability element, because it's you know, a service department is effectively an extension of a hotel offer, but I would have question marks, but from what you're saying, that's already been decided.
Can you just clarify affordability, please? Anyone who wants to go?
Yeah, so I think to answer the question, that is already agreed. So they have gone to conventional residential. There has been some assessment of the uplift in the value of the residential. That was one of the 106 obligations for the stadium, and that has found that affordable housing still wasn't viable at the current value. So there was an allowance within the 106 to capture any increase in residential values or anything that would create a viability position where affordable housing could be provided. Some of those reviews have been carried out already and find that there's still no viable position for affordable housing.
I mean, just to follow up, I suppose, obviously there's an increase in height as well, isn't there? And often one of the mitigations for height is that you achieve more affordability, but that you're saying that's still not on the table, even with the increased height.
That's something we're discussing. Whether there's an increase in the value from additional floor space or anything like that. We haven't concluded that, but it's something we are probing the applicant on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Donnell?
In the original, or one of the original planning applications granted in 2015, permission was granted for a community health centre on what they call Plot 6. Perhaps you could tell me what's happening in relation to that. I mean, that's clearly something that the local community would be very much in need of. The area that you're talking about, Northumberland Park, is one of the most deprived areas, not just in London, but throughout the country. You also talk about the landmark building. I know from an architectural point of view that's important, but I mean there is already a landmark building there. It can't really be overshadowed. And the stadium's been called a spaceship that's landed in Tottenham High Street. So I think you already have your landmark. I think my views are pretty much summed up by the quality review panel, which was held on the 19th of April. And it says the corporate hotel, well, the hotel looks just like a corporate hotel, completely divorced from the diverse creative energy of the neighbourhood. And they asked that local communities and businesses should be involved in developing this scheme, ensuring that it provides clear community benefit. Could you tell me how you are working towards that, or how you and the company are working towards that?
On the community health, I can't give you an update on that. I do know that the wider health has been looked at, though, in part of the High Road West. So everything has changed since this was originally granted permission. So I know as part of that permission, there's also health provision, and it depends on the health care providers coming forward with that as well. So effectively, as I understand it, consent was granted, but then it's for the healthcare providers to take that up. So again, as I said, High Road West scheme's got that as well. The second question you asked was about the landmark. And that is one of the comments we have taken on board from the quality review panel, because at the moment we've been focusing on the actual design of the building rather than necessarily what's going on. We mentioned the podium, if you like, in terms of how do you open that up, because this is a very much on a match day, it's very busy up there, and how do you actually make it so it's when it's not match days or when there's not an event on there, how do you open that up to the community? Because there obviously will be a number of up to 654 residential apartments just in this scheme, but also all of along Park Lane and everything else for the wider community as well. So we are looking, actually, what we've been doing since that quality review panel is really trying to see how do we make that inviting all of the time, if you like, in terms of the last pre-app we had, for instance, we started saying, actually, how do you get activity on there so it sort of draws people up there, because the steps and everything else up there, but people need to know it's a destination, not just on match days. So that's what we're working on at the moment. And that's when we start to get some further ideas, we can start engaging further on that. So
I wanted to add something on with regards to the landmark aspect of things. As I understand that it's something that, of course, any architect would try to do that, but it is a qualification that kind of applies to the existing scheme. And as you well said, I think the stadium had landed on the high road. And what we're trying to do, if you remember as one of the hand sketches that I presented earlier, is trying to mediate between the lower scale and the larger scale of this building. So there is an attempt at that, you know, being a landmark, and again, from the design officers and in the existing consent, this has been defined as a campanile to the stadium, as a sort of beacon, or as a spire, as a point that adds urban legibility as you walk along the high road, particularly from Seven Sisters, from the south of the street. And we want that to be the case. I think there's a lot of development around it, and this will be the closest building to the high road, for which reason we think that's still appropriate.
Okay, sorry, it's just the.
Can you come through the chair, please? 'Cause I don't want conversations.
Okay, sorry, with permission, I just, the point in relation to the local community and local businesses becoming involved in developing this plan.
Can I remind the committee to switch off their microphones when you finish speaking? Thank you.
So yes, we're just at early stages of design at the moment in terms of, we've got the feedback from the quality review panel. Officers have also asked us those things. So we're just developing the designs, but soon we'll be ready to actually start that engagement, if you like. It's been really focused on the design principles, making sure the building, the fundamentals work in terms of the heights and everything else, and then there's in time to start engaging.
Okay, I mean, there have been a number of QRP reports. It's gone through several, you've had several discussions with the quality review panel. I think I'm correct in saying, so there's been quite a few amendments from where the scheme first started.
Been one quality review panel, but a number of pre-application meetings with officers, so I guess.
Okay. Councillor Mark.
Thanks. Can I just go back to the service department's point? And could you explain a bit more about the evolution from that to what you're currently proposing, and a bit more detail about how that's meant to work in practice? I think it says that the restaurant has been moved to separate those out. Why have you changed from having service departments to having more conventional? And could you just repeat about the parking spaces, because it's not in the current report, what the proposal is for car parking? Thanks.
So just for clarity, I think Mr. McNaught has explained it as well. We have planning consent for those to be apartments, not service departments, if you like, already. So it's not, we're not changing anything from the consented position. That's our fallback, if you like. So there's no change in that. The reason why we've changed the configuration of the building is to make it slender, if you like. That's the reason why the apartments are, if you like, at the top of the building, and then there's a terrace, if you like, halfway up the building in terms of those things. In the past, it was at the top, wasn't it? So that's the idea. That's to change the configuration of the building, but actually the uses and the actual apartments, whether they're serviced or not, they're the same as they are as the consented.
Or the parking.
Yes, in terms of the parking, it's already there to an extent in terms of there's a basement there for the car parking at the moment. That already exists. It's obviously not used for the apartments and for the hotel there, because they don't exist, if you like. So we have consent for 80. That's what there is, if you like. And I know that's different in terms of what parking standards would necessarily be now, but we do have consent and they are there. So again, officers, I'm sure, will be questioning in terms of what we will be doing with those, if you like, going forward. So.
Perhaps to Robbie or somebody else, because I'm still not really clear on, because the applicant already had planning permission for conventional apartments, and the relationship between that and the point that Councillor Ibrahim was making about viability. I wonder if you could just explain how that works, because I haven't seen one where it's a kind of combination of hotel and apartments, for example.
Yeah, so the 2017 amendment to the original permission, that did allow for the service departments to become C3 use class, so residential use class. There was still some interconnectivity between them because of the approved layouts, but the use would be as residential. When they had that at that stage, they did do an update to the viability assessment rather than a full viability review, but at that point, it was assumed that any uplift in the the price of the residential wouldn't be significant in the wider scheme. The other thing with the viability on this scheme is that and Sean will probably be able to explain it a bit better, but in terms of the stadium costs, there were lots of issues in terms of how that would be financed. Obviously, the fact there was COVID as well when that opened. So there's a lot that went. This was only one plot out of 6 of them. So part of this hotel and the residential part of the site, part of the reason they couldn't have a more affordable offering on those was due to the fact that they had to finance the stadium through those developments. So that was all part of the equations that were taken into viability assessments at the time. We will obviously have some discussions with them about how viability would work on this and sort of square those off as well, and it would be covered in any application. Whether or not that's a full viability review or not, you know, we'd have to have a look. But yeah.
Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, can you tell me what standard you're seeking for the hotel? Will it be Travelodge or will it be 5-star? Have you got any ideas about that? And I'm assuming there will be another quality review panel because there's only been one. And I would ask that it pay particular attention to the properties opposite development, Concord House, Lancaster Close, and the small terraced houses, because they're going to be totally gobsmacked when this goes up. So I would ask that particular attention is paid to that. And also the 106, I think, should be renegotiated because my assumption is you would sell the flats. You would actually sell the flats basically. So that's my assumption. And then also I think the plans, when they come forward, should have a clear assessment of the life cycle of the whole development in total.
Yeah, that is correct. So we'll have a full life cycle assessment for the building as part of the application, and just proof of all the sustainability credentials and requirements that are being currently that need to be provided according to regulations. With regards to where the hotel sits, we've been liaising with hotel operators at the moment, and that's in progress with the amenity provision that we have in the central part of the building. We think that we can look at something around 4 stars hotel, and that's in progress based on what the final operator ends up being, and what sort of take on amenities such as gym or fitness areas, as well as F&B and all-day dining, etc. Yes.
I mean, just to add on sustainability, one thing that, because we're looking at this again, it does give us the opportunity to look again at the whole of the sustainability of this building, because it was, it's a detailed planning application that was granted in 2016. That was designed probably in 2014. As we all know, just listening to your committee earlier, things have moved on tremendously in terms of not just the building regulations, but whole life cycle and everything else. So it really does give us an opportunity to look at the whole of the sustainability of the building, whether it's the energy, whether it's the PV panels on the roof and everything else. That's what we are taking very seriously. And again, through Officer Griaps, they're sort of going to look at that very carefully, particularly on things like facade design as well, because it looks like a very glass building, but actually they're all just windows. It's actually very carefully designed to make sure it's not just going to be a big glass house as well.
And will we have a second QRP panel?
I should think so, yes. I think the recommendation at the end of the last QRP was that there should be a further review.
And they pay attention to those properties.
We'll make sure that they address that, yes. Yeah. I mean, I think they did, but I will make sure that it's specifically addressed.
And just to say, in the 106, we will be looking at that to make sure that any additional impacts are mitigated appropriately. So that will be the next stage of discussions.
Okay, Councillor Ibrahim.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm just gonna come back to the conventional apartments. So what's the what the bedroom size is, because I mean, originally, if they were going to be part of a hotel offer, they probably don't have that many bedrooms each. Are we looking at essentially studios and one beds? No.
Well, I'll let you guys answer, but no, when they did the amendments in the 2017, they did have to make some of the rooms a bit bigger, so they met the minimum.
Well, there's
floor
bigger
space.
rooms, but and more rooms, like 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't seen detailed floor layouts for the proposal at the moment, but that's in the discussion. But they are all increasing in size, so you would get more larger units rather than some of the studios and so they're all 1 and 2 bed, I think, in the original approval. So.
Okay, and obviously you're, I think there was some clarity that was that they will be sold, so they're not going to be rented directly. So my assumption is that they're going to be sold on individually. So I suppose where it is, and with it being near a hotel offer and right near a stadium of a, you know, a Premiership football club, is there going to be any protection against them essentially being used as Airbnb units and just having that constant churn of just people coming in and out and having no sense of an actual kind of settled residential offer. They're just people there for a few weeks coming and going, and that's got a character in and of itself, and it's not necessarily one that we would recognise as a residential situation. And I'm sure, you know, you'll realise that obviously not just the football offer, but obviously we know what's been happening over the last week, the concerts, etc. So that have you not recognised that there's going to be a risk that it's essentially a mass Airbnb? What control will you have over that when you're effectively just going to be selling them to people? Because you do get these mass purchases, because, like, you know, if you go on Airbnb, it looks like you're renting somebody's private flat, but in reality, you know, it's a company that owns 30 of them in the same area or in the same city or you know, town. You know, what's to stop that happening?
I don't think it's any different to any other residential. Again, because we're in London, there are restrictions on short-term lettings as well, where if we're in other cities like Edinburgh and places like that, they have a real problem with Airbnb. But actually, because of the law, you're not allowed to actually there are restrictions on short-term letting in London. So you can't just let them out to Airbnb willy-nilly.
Councillor Emery. Oh, Councillor Emery, you wanted to come in. Can you switch off your microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, my question is really in relation to the buildings as they stand, because obviously this is the main thing that we're talking about here is the design change. Obviously, blocks A through to D seem to have some sort of symmetry in terms of the style of them, but then the Extreme Sports Building and the Tottenham Hotspur Hotel seem to have a completely separate element. And just obviously these buildings are on the size of a already sizable stadium, and it does seem like they all seem to have very disparate elements. I'm wondering if you can try and show how the hotel links to the Extreme Sports Building and how that works.
So how the building relates to the Extreme Sports Building? Yeah. So at the moment we're looking at the hotel, the hotel alone, and with that everything that's in the rest of the southern development as consented. So the Extreme Sports Building as per the image we showed with that angular shape. We are going to present that for our plan is to put that forward for planning as consented, but we have worked some illustrative schemes in lieu of what's there at the moment, given that that was an illustrative scheme that was approved for a very particular use, had a diving tank, it had a climbing wall, etc., that's proved non-viable, and we're just looking at the moment at an alternative massing proposal that, whilst retaining the same leisure use, gives us something that works better in relation to the hotel.
Okay, yeah.
Just in terms of the buildings themselves, do they have any links in terms of the style? Because I can see A through to D has a linked style. will there be a linked style?
So something we haven't shown here, perhaps, and probably talked about is a concept we presented very initially with the officers, which is the different families of buildings, if you like. So the hotel we're looking at belongs to the high road family of buildings with this set of angular shapes that you have in the TE, in some of the volumes that sort of project out of the stadium, etc., that pick up on historical alignments of the high road. And then we have the stadium itself, which is, an item in itself, and the 4 residential towers, which are more orthogonal and more sort of in line with a much more rational design, if you like.
Okay, any more questions? No? Okay, all right, well, thank you very much. And we'll see you later this year, I guess, in the summer. Thank you.
Apologies. We brought a model which context hasn't been fully updated with the High Road West, but if any of the members want to have a look, I don't know what the best way is to do that, whether now or later, just because at some point we'll probably have to take it with us, I suppose. Yeah.
Does anybody, I'm going to regret asking this question, aren't I? I'm going to regret this. We haven't got very much of the agenda to get through. So if you could would you mind just waiting whilst I get through the rest of the agenda? And then if anyone wants to look at the model, yeah. And then rather than me saying, does anybody want to look at the model now? But okay. So if you could just maybe hang on for a few more minutes with the model. Okay, thank you. So we're now on to item 11, which is update on major proposals. That's pages 281 to 296, and that's for noting. Are there any questions? Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, page 288, Draper's Almshouses. Can we have an update, please, on that? And I want to raise one that's not on here. What is going on at Hornsey Town Hall? Because that place has been under development for how many years now? It doesn't look anywhere near complete. So what on earth is happening there?
Thank you. Yeah, on the almshouses, we're still in discussions about that. We've raised the question about the position on that in terms of affordable housing. Are the almshouses to be classed as affordable housing when historically there wouldn't have been a 106 legal agreement on that as it would be nowadays. So we're still working through that with the applicant and hope to bring that forward hopefully to a July committee, and if not September. On Hornsey Town Hall, it has been a long construction process. I think speaking to the contractor recently, I think working the services into a listed building has taken them a lot longer than they expected, and that's really elongated the construction program on the listed building. Some of the residential is occupied and some of it close to occupation, so it is reaching the final stages now, but has taken longer than they anticipated.
Okay, thank you. Item 12, applications determined under delegated powers. That's pages 297 to 318. That's for noting. If there are any questions, well, you can always ask Robbie questions later on about any of those. Item 13 is new items of urgent business, and there are none. And item 14 is date of the next meeting, and that is the 3rd of July. So I close the meeting, and if anyone wants to look at the model, it's over there. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Good night.